focused on what they're going to do to get your network up to speed, and how they're going to approach that, timelines, things like that. When they're presenting the plan, go back one, Michael. The first thing about the plan is, did they really develop that for your company? Have they spent some time with you? Have they talked about your processes? Are they accommodating your business operations and the way you function into the plan? Did they listen to you, and did they add those things into that plan and take that all into consideration? Those are all, I mean, that's all critical. I mean, if you're looking for an IT provider, them understanding your business and how it operates is crucial to any plan for ongoing maintenance support moving forward. Does it include things to improve your business? Is there mention of, well, you've got this one old server, we need to replace that at some point down the road to increase your uptime or availability or reliance and things like that? Are they proposing items that'll improve your systems going forward? The other thing is, do they provide a timeline? Do they have milestones? A plan is only a plan if you enact it. So having a set date to have certain functions or features available is critical in any plan. Next slide.
Okay.
Have they clearly set expectations and defined deliverables? Do they have a deliverables section or a section in their MSA outlining exactly what they're delivering to you and exactly how they're going to deliver it? Do they have a layered security solution that they're implementing? Do they have a backup business continuity system that they're including with that? Those two things, a lot of service providers won't include with their managed services agreement, but with my experience in being in the industry as long as I have found that those two items are absolutely critical to both the customer's experience and uptime and reliability, and also important for the service provider, because those solutions reduce the cost for the provider. So it's a win-win for both the client and the service provider. The client gets better performance and availability on their systems, and the service provider spends less labor hours working on systems. So those are critical items. So anyway, just a fully vetted and considered plan is probably the most important thing that a service provider can provide for you. Next slide. Number 2, an agreement. This is a little bit reflective of number 1, but I felt that it should get its own line, because there are so many instances of a company signing up with an IT provider for managed services, and they don't get a detailed managed services agreement that explains exactly what services are being provided, exactly what software licensing, hardware, labor time, delivery of that labor, all those things spelled out clearly in a written document that both the client and the service provider agree on. And I've heard of many customers that have signed up with providers that had a one-page MSA that says, we'll take care of your stuff. That while easy to handle and fun as a sales tool, at the end of the day, there's always going to be questions as issues come up. Is this covered, or is it not covered, or is it going to be extra to deal with this and whatnot? So that's crucial for an agreement between your companies going forward, is you actually have a defined agreement as what they're delivering and what you should expect. Do they have standards for service in the agreement? Do they have SLAs, service level agreements? Are they guaranteeing their service? in writing in the contract is, are there penalties for them to fail on those service levels? Next slide. Have they tailored the agreement to fit your business, or is it just a template that they scratch your name into a couple places? When we, just as a comparison, when I do an MSA for someone, it is, obviously it's templatized to some extent, but the sections are handwritten to fit exactly what our customer wants, as far as if they want people there once a week or twice a week or once a month, how many hours you need to dedicate. If they have a particular line of business application that's specific to that customer, we need to figure in extra 4 hours a month to do maintenance and procedures or support for that, things like that. So is that tailored to your business? Is it 24/7? Do you need 24/7, or is it 8x5? So all those things kind of come together. Is this an agreement that was written for you, or is this an agreement that was written for somebody else that they just slapped your name on? So it's important to review that and make sure that it fits your business. And then reviewing the agreement with you. When we do an MSA for someone, we have, I believe there's about 17 sections in the MSA. It's very detailed, explains exactly everything that we're doing, how we're doing it, what the deliverables are. And when we are reviewing that with the customer, we go section through section, explain everything that's in that, make sure the customer understands, and we move on to the next section. It's very important from both sides of the agreement that everybody fully understands what's being executed in that, and what's being guaranteed, and what's included and what's not included. So it's very important. All right, let's go into the next slide. Number 3, value. Does the partnership between you and your service provider provide value? Does the service provider follow published best practices? Every server manufacturer, hardware manufacturer, device manufacturer, software, they all have published best practices that they recommend to get the most out of their products, as far as installation, deployment, configuration, ongoing maintenance procedures, things like that. That's honestly what you're really paying a managed services provider for. You're not really paying for them to fix stuff. You're paying for them to keep it running. So they need to be following the procedures recommended by the manufacturers of your equipment to make that equipment as resilient and functional as possible, and make sure that it is running as much as it can. Are they providing a documented process with clearly defined configurations and procedures? Most good MSPs will have a written document. A lot of them actually have a physical binder. I know in modern day and age, paper is so passe, but a lot of very successful MSPs have a binder with all their processes, their documentation, their procedures outlined in that binder, and everybody gets one on day one, new employees, and they start bringing them in directly into that procedure or process manual. A technology assessment. The first thing we do for our customer, for example, from us, is we do a technology assessment. We have a number of tools that we run, a number of processes, a number of things that we check, lists that we go through to see what kind of health they're in. And this allows us to define a baseline. You can't tell if things are getting better, you can't tell if they're improving, you can't tell if they're performing more unless you have a baseline before you got started. So having that simple performance metric to see if the changes you make are improving or making these things worse is crucial to your overall IT strategy, especially from the perspective of performance and maintenance. Is there an improvement plan? Are they giving you recommendations or a statement of work or something that says, things aren't in bad shape right now, but you've got these concerns down the road. You've got, aging hardware here. You've got a server that needs to be upgraded here. You've got these machines that are falling out of warranty. this switch is a 100 meg switch instead of a 1,000 meg switch. If we replaced it, it would make your network speed faster. The Wi-Fi access points are old. They don't have good coverage. All those kind of things. They should be providing a list of things that need to be changed, upgraded, improved, maintenance done on them, whatever it could be, that will make your network better and then make your employees more productive and ultimately save or generate more revenue for you. Next one, do you have a dedicated admin? So we dedicate a admin to each customer, so they get a weekly email and a monthly phone call with that admin, and that admin's been looking at reports and monitoring and things over the last week or the last month, and is taking actions on things and provides those documented reports with recommendations. We've noticed that this server is the memory is maxed out on it. 8 to 10 days this last month. It looks like maybe we need to upgrade the memory in that to improve the performance and the reliability. Just things like that. That dedicated person is always looking at their stuff and is familiar with their environment and their configuration, and can make business process recommendations and network recommendations to that customer on improving their situation. We kind of talked about best practices. Let's see. It's the same slide. Next slide, Mike. Vendor management. This is one often overlooked feature of a managed services provider is are they providing documented vendor management? One of the things that we do is we include a couple of forms in our MSA, which is Managed Services Agreement, that has authorization for us to communicate with their ISP, their phone vendor, their power company, the leasing agency, whoever they're getting their building from, maintenance personnel, things like that, so that we can intervene in a critical situation, or that we can request support, for power, for example. If we're seeing power fluctuations in the UPS system, we've got their electrical company or their electrical provider or their agency or whatever it is that we can contact and request support on their behalf. And then also working with those vendors to replace or upgrade products, things like that. That's a feature that's often overlooked. Mobile device management. As the technosphere is moving more and more towards centralized cloud computing systems, we've got a lot of end users that are bringing their own phone, their own tablet, their own laptop, and just connecting to file services instead of old file servers. They're connecting to Office 365 for email instead of an on-prem Exchange server. They're using SharePoint for file storage collaboration, using Link for their phones, things like that. So the dependence on hardware and corporate quote-unquote hardware is getting less and less, and a lot of people are using their own devices for business these days, and being able to manage those and to secure them is important to any company, and more importantly, publicly traded companies, companies that are compliant requirements, companies that have HIPAA concerns to deal with. All those kind of organizations need to be able to have a clear and concise BYOD, bring your own device policy, and there needs to be software or systems to back that up. Next under value, are they professional? Are they clean and presentable? Do they have a uniform appearance? Do they have good customer service skills? Are they responsive and communicative? Can they work with your end users? Are they easy to work with? Things like that. From your end user's perspective, frustration levels for them, if they don't have professional support specialists to work with on issues, they get frustrated, and when they get frustrated, they get unproductive and unhappy, and that causes more problems. So having good professional support specialists that work with end users is important for the ongoing relationship, as well as your productivity and value of the MSP to you. So, and the last one, do they solve the problem? We hear stories and read stories about customers that had providers that the problems would just stack up and they would never get solved, and it was always, we've got this, this third-party vendor lined up to help us with this, or we're escalating the ticket or transferring the ticket to the vendor support or whatever it may be, but they never actually solved the problem. So if they're actually getting the job done, at the end of the day, that's where your main value is for an MSP. Next slide. All right, so number 4, the keys to the castle. So who's got the keys? This is one that is, there's no next slide on that one if you want to go back. This is one thing that a lot of customers don't often think about when they're signing up with a managed services provider is, are these guys locking me in, and do they have the key, and what do I have? What can I do if I decide I don't want to work with them anymore, or if there's been some problem and I want to switch to a different company, what do they have me locked in with, and how can I get them out? Some service providers will do things like that. They'll get your root god admin password, and I've seen instances where companies were held hostage by another service provider that wouldn't give them credentials for their routers or for their servers or whatever, and that obviously causes significant problems when you're trying to move over to a different provider, or if you have problems during that process. I've seen an instance where a company was switching from one service provider to another, and the other service provider said, well, we haven't received the payment on our final invoice. We'll provide you, your server credentials when we get that. And the next day they had a server problem, and nobody could log into the server and fix it because the other company was essentially holding them hostage. So what we do for this is, when we come into a new customer, we will have the customer copy the admin account, and we call it BMI admin, just as an example. And then we have the customer reset the password on the administrator account to whatever they want it to be, and they do not share that with us. So we use that duplicate account for all of our access and control. And if at any time the customer decides they don't want us in their system anymore, all they have to do is disable or delete that BMI admin account, and we're out. We definitely want our customers to hold on to their own keys. So that's one thing to think about when you're talking to a provider, is what's their policy on your control and access and passwords and things like that. All right, so let's move on to number 5. Size matters. There's two aspects to this. The first is the size of the company. And there's too big and there's too small. If you're looking at too big, you're looking, well, let's start with too small. Too small, service levels can drop if a tech is out, if somebody's out sick. If you've got a little 1 or 2 man shop, if somebody goes on vacation, then you're kind of dead in the water. Or they just don't have enough personnel and have to push things out too far. If your service provider says, we'll get out there and look at that next week, then that's an indicator that they're too small for your business. The polar opposite of that is too big. If you've got a huge managed service provider with hundreds of techs, tickets can get lost. You often won't get the same tech twice, so they won't be familiar with your network and your configuration. So you've got to spend time for them to figure out where things are at and how they're set up. before they can provide support. So that there's problems with the too big scenario as well. The other aspect of the size matters is, do they charge the right amount? And I'm not talking about charging the least. I'm talking about charging the right amount. So they can charge too much and they can charge too little. When you think about it, do you want to be using a managed services provider that is profitable, that's making money, that's going to be around for 10, 15 years or more? These little guys that charge $50 a user or $49.99 a workstation, things like that, you cannot be profitable on your contracts at that kind of rate. So either they're going to go out of business because they're not making enough money to operate, or their service is going to be terrible because they don't have the labor resources to fill requests. Alternately, if they're too expensive, if you've got a company that wants to charge you $279 a user, that's a little on the steep side. Unless they're doing, um, specific services that require a significant amount of time or resources or investment or hardware, software, then obviously there's that to consider. But if they're charging too much, they're being a little too profitable at the cost of use. So really consider when you're looking at pricing if it is too high or if it's too low. So that's just another thing to consider. So go to the next slide. All right, so number 6, the help desk. There are a number of providers out there that don't have a dedicated support desk available, that you're calling one of their guys, that will either call back or email or will work on it or whatever. So there often isn't a ticket, there isn't issue management, there isn't resolution policies, things like that. You should select a provider that has an actual help desk with dedicated personnel that uses appropriate methodology and processes to manage tickets and workflows, and make sure that tickets get responded to timely, and make sure they get worked on timely, and make sure they get resolved timely. We recommend you work with a provider that uses ITIL methodology, and ITIL is a documented IT methodology for handling maintenance, support, administration of network infrastructure, and it's really written from a provider's standpoint to the client, and the way it handles incidents and problems and tickets and things like that is very well documented, and it is widely accepted throughout the industry as the gold standard for operational process. So we generally recommend that, and we follow ITIL standards and methodology for our help desk system as well. So we have a clearly defined process, and we've even got we've got it drawn out in a Visio diagram of ticket comes in, this is how it gets handled, this is how it gets escalated, things like that. So so your documented support system and process is important for that. Just so you know that, okay, if I call in and open a ticket, I know this is what's going to happen, and then that's what happens. So that kind of depend on is important for general operations. Another thing is that there should be multiple ways to create a ticket. For BMI, for example, you can call our 800 number, you can call one of our local numbers, you can send an email to an email address, a specific one. You can, our part of our package includes an icon that goes in your system tray in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. You can right-click on that and then click Create Ticket. You can log into our web portal and request a ticket. And one of the things we're about to implement is text to ticket, so you can actually text in a support request. So we've got all these different ways to create a ticket, That way, you're not bound to internet access or phone access or things like that. You've got different ways to create a ticket, and whether you're sitting at your office, in front of your computer, or in your car, driving to a customer, you've got a way to create a ticket and get some action on a problem. Automatic generation from monitors. So your service provider should have all kinds of monitors going, and we'll talk about that here in a minute. But there should be tickets that generated from that, and there should be people that look at that at the help desk and see if a response is needed on that, or if it's just a one-time incident, or whatever it may be. A customer portal, this critical to have your POC be able to log into a portal and be able to look at all their open issues and tickets and problems and see what's going on out there, what is on hold, what's been acted upon, and things like that. And that's both from an operational thing from the service provider standpoint and from your standpoint, because as the customer, you need to make sure that your employees are getting their issues resolved so that they're productive. Um, and you need to be able to see that your provider is hitting their service level agreements. Are they opening the tickets within 4 hours? Are they responding to the user within 8 hours, or whatever their policies are? You need to be able to look and make sure that they're meeting what they guarantee to you. Another thing on that topic is a positive customer experience. Do your employees not call the help desk because they've got grumpy Jim on the help desk that berates them and cuts them off and is rude and things like that? Are they pleasant? Are they customer service oriented? Are they communicative, and do they actually help the customer, make them feel like, empathize with them and make them feel that they have the issue resolved and things like that? So it's important from the help desk standpoint. So let's hit the next slide. Number 7, monitoring systems. Does your service provider monitor your network actively, seeking problems, and do they call you when you have a problem before you even know about it? I've had multiple instances where I've gotten an alert and then called the client and ask them, hey, is your email working? And they look down and they say, well, actually it isn't. How did you know? And that's because we have monitors that are sending and receiving emails that are pinging or calling out to systems and getting responses, or workflows or scripts or things that are running behind the scene to make sure that things are working. And if things aren't working, that it flags alerts and lets us know at the help desk that, hey, this system is not functioning correctly, or there's something wrong. So we're monitoring the system at all times for functionality and uptime. We're monitoring for performance. There's dozens and dozens of performance metrics that you can monitor on servers, from RPC latency, which is the communication from an email server to another email server, things like that, to disk I/O, that's disk load, processor, memory utilization, things like that. That the managed service provider should be tracking and being able to report to you that, hey, the memory usage has been spiking more and more over the last few months. We need to look at doing something to resolve that, to increase the memory or reduce the load or whatever needs to be done. Uptime monitoring, we use 2 systems, and there's only really one way to do this to make sure you are capturing the monitoring, is to have an internal and an external monitor both running. Because if you have an internal monitor alone, if your internet dies or your power goes out, then you're not monitoring for that time. So having a redundant monitor outside of your network is crucial to making sure that everything is running for your clients. Baseline reporting, this ties back into the technology assessment that we talked about earlier. Having a good baseline for your network health and your performance and being able to look at delta reports and see how that's improving over time, uh, as far as your monitoring goes, is important to your overall strategy and what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. Regular reports and with comments and recommendations from the network admin. So we just again as an example, we generate weekly reports every Monday, and then those reports go to the account managers for those customers, the admins, and the admin reviews the reports and then forwards them to the customer with a notes and recommendations section that says, hey, John Smith, I was reviewing your report and found that these servers are not updating. We need to schedule a maintenance window to manually update them this weekend and catch them up. Or I noticed that all of your shipping computers are not scanning for viruses on Wednesday night. Are you leaving them on? Things like that he can see in the report details and can question you about, or say see what needs to be done to resolve it or improve it, or upgrade the maintenance or whatever needs to be done on it. And performance metrics, kind of talked about this before, is are they monitoring for those and to make sure you're hitting them and what you need to do to improve on those. All right, next slide.
Okay.
All right, so we're up to number 8. Certified. Are your MSP technicians, are they certified? There's a number of certification organizations out there that certify for all kinds of IT-related job roles. The most common of those is probably CompTIA and Microsoft. If you have an engineer in your network, he's probably going to be an MCSA or an MCSE, which is a Microsoft Certified Systems Engineer, that is doing things inside your network and on your servers to maintain them and make them work better. Your desktop level people may have a CompTIA A+ certification, which is essentially the computer technician certification. That's what you're going to look for in your help desk personnel. Networking engineers might have a Cisco CCNA certification. You should have, your ISP should have somebody on staff that's certified in ITIL. You should have somebody that is certified or at the very least trained in any particular line of business applications that you operate inside of your organization. We provide GP support, for example, Great Plains for Microsoft, and we have a number of Microsoft certified Great Plains specialists, on our staff. So that's one thing that we provide with our support is we've got certified Great Plains guys. But we've got all those. We've got people with CompTIA. We've got Microsoft certifications, ITIL certifications inside of our group. And while the actual certification doesn't really do anything for you, it does let you know that these are trained, experienced technical support people that you at least have some validation that they, honestly, they know what they're doing. So the certification is important for selecting a provider. All right, so let's slide into the next one. Number 9. All right, so this is, it says consulting here, but this is really VCIO, and this is consulting overall. But a VCIO or VCIO service is something that most MSPs provide to customers, and this can include a number of different things and different levels of interoperability with your staff. We provide this, for example, with all of our MSA or managed services agreements, but we don't necessarily provide the same level of service with them all. It kind of depends on your structure and your organization, and if you have people dedicated to some of the roles. So if we've got, just for example, a small 25 user company, they're probably not going to have a CIO or information officer or an IT director or anything like that. So they really have no one dedicated to figuring out what their budgets might be, what kind of improvements they need to consider, uh, if they're going to change their ISP, someone that helps consult with them on getting the right ISP and making sure they have the level of service they need, things like that. Um, Whereas you might have a larger customer with 150, 200 users that does have a VCIO or a CIO or CFO that focuses on IT strategy and budgeting and planning and things like that. So having a resource on your staff as an MSP that can actually provide real consulting um, with a client is very important to the health of that client and their overall IT strategy over the 6 months, year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, the direction that they're going and executing on that path. So things like a monthly check-in, even if it's just a phone call or an email, hey, how are things going? I want to see if you had any challenges we need to talk about or anything we need to plan on for next quarter, this quarter, whatever that may be. A quarterly review meeting where you actually book some time and sit down and talk about business processes, things that can be improved, things that can be fixed. And then an annual budgeting and planning review, and that's where you can sit down with them on an annual basis and talk about expenditures and goals and things for the coming year and how you're going to achieve those and what kind of budget you have and what kind of money you're willing to spend on it. Um, Very important to your overall strategy and the success of your organization. So next slide.
Okay. Oops. Go back there.
Okay, sorry about that. All right, so the next one on the list is number 10, and that is the whole package. You will often find managed services providers that can give you desktop support or server support, but if it comes to you have a problem with your phone system or your fax or your printing or whatever it may be, that they can't help with that they need to bring in another party, or they basically tell you that's not in their area, or that they can't really help you with that. So it's important to have a company that, if they don't have all of those services, can at least help you select them, manage them, administer them, things like that, and can really provide that end-to-end solution for you. Because at the end of the day, your MSP is basically your IT department. And if you're at a big company with an IT department and you need a phone line installed, you're going to take it to the IT department, and you're going to expect the IT department to resolve that. So it should be the same way with your managed services provider. If you have a business challenge, your managed services provider should have the solution to meet that challenge. So whether it be cloud services, hosted servers, new equipment on-prem, phones, whatever it is, they should be able to help you address those concerns or those needs and find a solution that can fit the bill for you. All right, so let's jump into the next slide. It should just be our Q&A. So at this time, we'll if anybody's got any questions or comments or anything like that we can address, we'll go ahead and handle those now.
Yeah, and thank you for the great presentation, Fred. I think you brought up a lot of good points on kind of how to make sure that you are getting the most out of the managed service provider. As of right now, we haven't had any questions submitted, so I'll give a couple minutes here just in case anything does come in. And also, we will be sending a follow-up email after this webinar, most likely tomorrow morning, that will have a link with the recorded version of this webinar in case you missed anything or you want to rewatch anything from today's presentation. And it looks like we still haven't had any questions submitted. We'll give maybe another minute in case anything does come in. So we did get a question. It was, what are the red flags to watch for that tell me the MSP is not providing good service?
Red flags. I would say if an MSP is not providing good service, you're going to know about it first from your end users. If you've got a user that's not able to work or is regularly frustrated because of issues with the service desk or the MSP, then they're going to let you know about it. I would I would probably recommend if you do feel like you're having some issues, I would maybe do an internal poll of users just to kind of see what their feedback is. Because I mean, ultimately, they're the ones that are interfacing with the support department the most, and if there are problems with it, they're going to know about it, and they're usually going to be pretty vocal. But if they're not, if you give them an outlet to discuss it, they'll let you know about it there as well.
Perfect. If you decide to move in a different direction from your current provider, what does the transition plan look like?
Well, it depends on your separation, really. If it's an amicable one, you generally will engage a new provider, and then the new provider will work with your old one to transition you over. And most MSPs, just so you're aware, don't include that service with their contract. So if you're going to move to somebody else, you can pretty much guarantee that you're going to get a bill for every moment of time that the old provider is working with the new one above and beyond your contract. So that's one thing to consider. But if it's not a amicable parting of the ways, it's probably going to be painful. And we've seen this on more than one occasion where a customer moved from one provider to another. The old provider is just becomes immediately non-responsive. They don't want to help. They don't want to invest in any time or resources into the move. So it's always going to be painful to move, but in most instances, it's going to be more painful to not move. So if you're working with a good provider that's your new one, uh, as long as they can get generally admin credentials into your stuff, they can generally handle the migration pretty well on their side, and they'll have a plan to move you over and do it securely and make sure that once everything is completed that you're completely disassociated with the previous provider, and if they're locked out, they can't get in, things like that. From the security standpoint, most of the time, if you're moving from an internal resource to a service provider, you do have a little bit of additional security concern there, because there is a chance that depending on if that IT person was disgruntled or whatever, they may have a grudge that they may look to and do something to you. But the service provider generally won't, because they have a lot of liability. They have a good name to protect, and they're not looking for legal problems. So you generally won't have too much of a problem with them. But a good new provider will have procedures and documentation and things to plan on for that move.
Okay, great. And I think we had a follow-up from the red flags question, and that was, how do I know that things have improved? Some improvements are less visible.
There's a number of generally accepted performance metrics for your general operations. One of them is the ATE, the average tickets per endpoint. This generally will go up with poor service, and it'll go down with good service. And the reason it will go up is because the users are having more problems because maybe their desktops aren't maintained as well, or the server will have problems, so they'll have downtime, which creates tickets. There'll be performance metrics or monitors that'll be firing off tickets. all those things will all come together in that one ATE metric. And you generally want to see that under 2, usually about 1.5 tickets per endpoint. If you get to 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 or more, you're generally going to be in a pretty bad spot. So your service provider should provide you some performance metrics like that. If they don't, you should ask for your average tickets per endpoint for your network. And then if you can get them to give you that, then you can track that over time and see if that number is going down, if it's holding steady or going up. And that'll give you a good indication of your overall performance from that provider.
Awesome. Well, that was all the questions that we did have submitted. So if any later questions do come up, you can feel free to reach out to Fred or Kevin. Their emails are on the page now, as well as you can either respond to the follow-up email tomorrow morning. And on behalf of everyone at Interdyne BMI, we just want to thank you again for your attendance and have a great rest of your day.